Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Jersey Mike's. The Bears and the Panthers giving us a jump start to the 2023 NFL Draft. Chicago trading the number 1 overall pick to Carolina, and here are those trade details laid out. Chicago receiving quite the haul here in this trade, including the number 9 overall pick in this year's draft and a first-rounder in next year's draft. They also get wide receiver DJ Moore, along with other future draft selections. And our senior draft analyst, Ryan Wilson, has released his latest mock since this trade went down. Here's how he thinks things are going to shake out for picks 1 through 10. The Panthers going with Bryce Young, number 1 overall. Houston going with CJ Stroud. And then he has Indy trading up to get Will Levis, number 3, and then Will Anderson Jr. in that mock trade going to the Arizona Cardinals. And the man himself, Ryan Wilson, is joining us, and Brady Quinn, to break down Ryan's latest mock draft. So, Ryan, you have the Panthers, we just saw it there, taking Bryce Young first overall. If you are Carolina, why do you think they would go with a Bryce Young over a guy like CJ Stroud, Ryan?
Yeah, that's the question, right, Jacqueline? And I talked to teams right after the trade happened that thought it was either Bryce or CJ, so there's no certainty there. But I go back to Frank Reich's comments back at the Combine where he spoke to Jonathan Jones, and here's some of the words he used. You got to be able to be an accurate passer. You have to have toughness. You have to be a great leader. You have to process information pretty quickly. You have to be able to play from the pocket, and those are all things Bryce does. Those are all things CJ does. So the question then becomes, are you going to take a quarterback in Bryce Young that historically has never been drafted in the first round, let alone with the first overall pick, to lead your organization? Or are you going to go with CJ Stroud, who fits the bill physically? And when you meet him in person, he is more impressive than he is by just watching him play. And I think that changed some people's opinion, including mine, including Rick Spielman, who also talked with him on the set and at the Super Bowl back in Phoenix. And those are the questions. Those are that's the calculus that Frank Reich is having to do. That's the calculus that Jim Caldwell's having to do on that staff. And those are the things they're going to work through. I don't think you go wrong either way, but I think if you're pressing me on who I'm taking, who my QB1 is, I'm taking Bryce Young and moving forward with that organization, hopefully in the right direction, finally finding the quarterback.
I think it's really interesting to watch how the odds changed after the Combine. It seemed like Bryce Young was the favorite going into it. He even weighed in, and they gave his height and weight, and we thought that was the biggest concern, and the odds really didn't change. It wasn't until after the throwing session where CJ Stroud leapt into the number 1 position to be taken number 1 overall once this trade occurred. So it makes you think that maybe the Carolina Panthers came away from the Combine not only watching CJ Stroud throw in person, but also interviewing him and feeling a little bit better about potentially him being the guy. That being said, I'm also not necessarily sold that the Carolina Panthers are staying put at this spot. A report did come out that they potentially like maybe a couple of guys in this draft class. It feels more like a move by David Tepper, especially this early considering it's March 13th. And we're talking about a draft that doesn't hit till the end of April, that they just want to be in control. Like David Tepper wants to find a solution for what's going to happen in Carolina. They've gone the free agent route. They don't want to go back there. They want to draft a quarterback and build around him for the foreseeable future. So if that's the case, obviously the Carolina Panthers are in control now. They gave up some assets and some draft picks, but the reality is it's all about solving the quarterback position for that team. It could be CJ Stroud, it could be Bryce Young. Either way, both those guys are suited to start day one, I think, for the Carolina Panthers and make an impact.
Another team that needs a quarterback here. We got the Colts. So, Ryan, you have the Colts trading up to get Will Levis with that number 3 pick. Ryan, do you think this Carolina-Chicago trade maybe places a little bit of urgency on Indy to trade up and make that move?
Jacqueline, yes, I do. And there's going to be an arms race to get to the top. And Brady said something interesting about whether the Panthers stay put or not, and we'll have to wait to see how that unfolds. But this means that the teams behind them, including the Texans at number 2, have some decisions to make. And the Colts are sitting at 4. They could be concerned that at 7, the Raiders might want to leapfrog them, and they trade up to 3. The Cardinals are not looking for a quarterback. Kyler Murray is going to be their guy once he's healthy. They move down, get some draft picks, still get the defensive player that they want under the new head coach and new general manager in Arizona. All the while, the Colts get their quarterback in Will Levis. Now, do I know whether it's Will Levis or Anthony Richardson? I do not. I know they like Levis in that building, but we have a long way to go until the draft, over 40 days, so they have to sort that out. And I think that the owner and the head coach, the new head coach, they're tired of going to free agent market with the veteran quarterback situation in Indianapolis. I think Irsay wants to get someone he can draft, a la Peyton Manning, a la Andrew Luck. That has worked out for them historically, and I think that's the path they're going to go down again. The issue, of course, is that when you watch 2022 Will Levis, he ain't Peyton Manning and he ain't Andrew Luck, and you have to figure out a way to get the good Will Levis and alleviate all the bad Will Levis we saw last season for various reasons.
Yeah, and I think Shane Steichen can figure that out, right? He's a smart offensive mind. He knows how to play to players' strengths. So I have no concerns about whatever quarterback the Colts end up taking. He'll put them in a position to succeed. I think the biggest thing is they need their offensive line to play much better than what we saw this past season. I think it's really interesting, Ryan, you went with the Colts trading up. I think that's the team to keep an eye on moving forward, and has everything to do with the fact that the Houston Texans sit there at number 2. And I think if you're Jim Irsay and you want to solve your quarterback issue, another team that's gone that veteran quarterback either via trade or in free agency, going that route, and it hasn't worked out, you're another team that might be talking to Carolina saying, hey, we heard you might be interested in a couple of guys. Well, here's who we're interested into, and we want to trade up to number 1 to get him, to make sure the Houston Texans, who are in our division, don't get this guy. And you might be able to sell Jim Irsay on that theory. And if you're the Panthers, you go out and you try to find a replacement for a guy you just lost in DJ Moore. Yeah, you want to find your rookie quarterback, but who's he throwing to? That's going to be a big issue, and you want to get some of that draft capital back. So maybe there's a thought here that Carolina, trading up so early, does move back to number 4. It's the Colts that instead trade up ahead of Houston, and they take the quarterback of their choice. Now, you have to be really, really certain of your intel if you are the Carolina Panthers and you're moving back, because there's so many potential teams that could trade up, probably at the Arizona Cardinals as well. And they look at them at number 3 saying, that's the spot that I might be looking at if I want to trade up. If I'm Atlanta, for example, which it's hard to imagine they're going to go in the season with Desmond Ridder, especially as they continue to keep stockpiling talented players like Jonnu Smith playing next to Kyle Pitts and Drake London, who they drafted last year. I already mentioned we already mentioned the Las Vegas Raiders earlier on today's show. They need a quarterback. That's another team you could potentially keep an eye on too, to trade up to number 3 and leapfrog potentially the Carolina Panthers in this case if they were to trade back. So I think the Colts are a team to keep an eye on moving forward. They're obviously going to address the quarterback position, but do they stay put? Do they move up 1, or do they move up all the way to number 1, where Carolina moves back, gets back some draft capital, but also the quarterback they're looking for?
And Ryan, in your latest mock draft, you have the Bears taking Myles Murphy with that number 9 overall pick. How does he fit into the system that Ryan Poles and the Bears front office are trying to build there in Chicago?
By the way, Jacqueline, you need like a whiteboard and like sticky pins and yarn to put all the pieces together as Brady lays them out, because it does become pretty complicated. It feels like a conspiracy theory to documentary. We'll get to that later because my head is swirling just thinking about it. But the Chicago Bears are in a great position. They hit an absolute grand slam with the trade down, moving to 9. That means they're sold on Justin Fields, which certainly makes a lot of sense. There's no reason not to be. And if they go out and attack the free agent market to get offensive linemen, and that appears to be the case. Mike McGlinchey's been mentioned as a possible signing. We heard Brady mention last segment Isaac Seumalo playing interior. They signed T.J. Edwards, a linebacker, to help fill that Roquan Smith role. So you go defense here, and if Myles Murphy's sitting there, you run and get him. You get your edge rusher there. Will Anderson's already gone. Jalen Carter's already gone. But you're still in the sweet spot, right at probably the bottom edge of the sweet spot of where you want to be to land a defensive player. And Myles Murphy comes in day 1, helps your team day 1. He just turned 21 years old. He's going to get better, and probably miles better, over the next 2 or 3 years as he grows into his body. He's already 6'5", 275, but he has a chance to be a special player, replace Robert Quinn on the outside, and get that defense back to where it was a few years ago.
Makes a lot of sense. They need help up front. He might be that best player available at this point, but that's really what they should go with. The highest graded player when they draft, because this entire roster needs help. And so whether it's Myles Murphy or anyone else that you could look at down the list that happens to be available to them offensively, either on the O-line or defensively, whoever's that highest graded player, that's who the Chicago Bears need to go with. Clearly, this move back, it gives every vote of confidence into Justin Fields being the guy. He's now got an extra guy to throw to outside of just Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool and Cole Kmet in DJ Moore now. But the reality is they still need help on the offensive line. They still need a ton of help on defense. So they're devoid at a lot of spots. It's best player available at this moment.
All right, and that is Brady Quinn and Ryan Wilson breaking down Ryan's latest mock draft. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it. And you can hear Ryan alongside Rick Spielman in their podcast With the First Pick. In the latest episode, the guys are diving deeper into the Chicago and Carolina trade. You can download and listen wherever you get your podcasts. You can scan that QR code, and you can also find Ryan's latest mock draft over on CBSSports.com.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.